Hello everybody and welcome back to another Multiversal Musings video. Today, I wanted to do something a bit different. So, funny story, I started this channel planning to talk about DC and document my journey discovering Star Trek for the first time. I even made a full review of Enterprise Season 1 and it got copyright blocked. So here I am, a DC fan, a Trek newbie who's only seen the films, Enterprise Season 1, and read like 2 Next Generation comics. And I'm trying to work out what the hell to talk about when it comes to the other part of my channel. And there was a silver lining in the clouds. I saw it was on sale during the Black Friday event on Steam, Star Trek Resurgence, a Telltale Star Trek game. So today I'm giving you my newbie review of Resurgence. The good, the bad, the jank.
So clean I can see myself. And you know what? Not half bad.
Hurry up!
And what the game alongside Enterprise has taught me about why Star Trek resonates with so many fans and what I love about this franchise. So right off the bat, my first 2 hours of this didn't record. And I didn't know until after I had written a rough script of this. So of course I couldn't use the footage of things I had written about. So I went back and I retroactively re-recorded the 2 hours at the start of this game just so I can have recordings that fit what I was talking about, right? And also, the only thing I want to say is I don't know what the title Resurgence comes from. I don't know what that's got to do with anything. What I can say though is that the only thing that resurges in Resurgence is the jank in this game. Like, oh my days, it is impressively janky.
From everything I've read and everything I've heard, we're lucky you were available to us. Coming from a premier starship and all. To our little research vessel. Starfleet Award of Valor during the Dominion War.
The loading screens felt that they were powered by Potato, and maybe that's because I'm running the game off an external hard drive instead of an SSD, which is fair enough, but for a game that's basically a narrative graphic novel, the length of the pauses were wild. It's like not even Starfield was this slow. Then parts of the intro felt like they, skipped.
Relaunch.
Oh, whoa. Excuse me.
A lot of new faces coming on board.
Did I miss a scene? Did the game miss a scene? Who knows? And there were some shots where the camera angles were just insane. And oh my days, the running animation, I cannot overstate how unbelievably hilarious that is.
Good day, Commander.
And this whole interaction just feels off. The dialogue, the janky movements, everything.
You gotta be more careful. I just got here. I'm not ready to see you two get blown to space dust just yet. Now let's get you down to sickbay.
Great.
And also, can we talk about the moment where Diaz smooches Miranda and it is like the worst animation since Hoodwink 2?
Not gonna lie.
Kiss her, go and get in there. Give her a smooch. Whoa, look at that. That looks so terrible. That looks awful.
That was nice.
But honestly, all that jank kind of added to the charm. Even when I failed a QuickTime event and Diaz basically yeeted himself into space, I was having a great time. So with all that jank out the way, let's talk about Resurgence, which is basically a Telltale game wearing a Starfleet uniform, which as a newcomer to this franchise is perfect because it doesn't tell you about Star Trek, it makes you act like you are in Star Trek. You play as 2 separate characters with established histories and relationships, which means choices actually feel like they matter. Your past matters, your reputation matters. People treat you differently based on your decisions. Then the game drops you straight into a crisis. You're suddenly in command of the bridge during a massive ionic energy storm. Now, you've been on the ship for like half a second at this point, and one officer, Westbrook, already dislikes you.
Listen, can I be blunt, Commander?
I see no reason to stop now.
Commander Sutherland, your predecessor, was one of the best first officers in all of Starfleet. His record was impeccable and his reputation was without equal. I mean no disrespect, but the shoes you're stepping into are almost impossible to fill. He was loved by the crew, and he was one of my closest friends.
And another, Bridrosian, basically worships you.
I've been following your career for quite some time, and I look forward to learning as much as I can from you.
Back off, ya spooky bitch!
And then the game gives you conflicting solutions where Westbrook says use a deflector and Bedrosian says no, redirect the aux power to the shields. Now the game is clearly trying to manipulate you. Like, pick the one who actually likes you. She believes in you. And I did choose to raise the shield, but not because the girl who suggested it was flattering my character, but because it felt like the logical choice. But there's no time to rest, boys, because soon after there's another dilemma, and it's much worse. So some of the storm smashes a docking clamp and sends debris everywhere. And this time you really have to weigh up your options. And I think this game does a fantastic job of making situations that feel really tense, like I genuinely struggled to find an option for this. Bedrosian suggests releasing the ship from the other docking clamps, or the hull will be absolutely ripped apart. But there's a problem with that, because the clamps aren't disengaging automatically like they should in times of crisis. But the clamps are fitted with exploding bolts that allow for an emergency release, which in hindsight really seems dangerous and could cause like a mini effect like the one that they're in. But anyway, who cares? As Bedrosian says, there's an engineering crew out there in harm's way, which I thought was interesting because the classic logic says you save the many over the few, right? But the game does something smarter. It's a role-playing game where your actions matter. So instead of asking what saves the most people, it asks who are you becoming when you decide who counts as expendable. Now that's not numbers, that is character. Now things quickly worsen and calls come to disengage from the starbase because it will have catastrophic damage to this station. And then the captain gets on the horn and he starts barking orders at you to go with blowing up the boats on the docking clamp, which would kill the two engineers. I loved having all of these options because it felt authentic, because when things go south and your adrenaline is running rampant, it really would be like any idea could be the one and pressure would be overwhelming. And so I decided to disobey a direct order from the captain himself, and so I went with Westbrook's idea and I reversed the polarity. Now this moment is a whole stack of ethical philosophies. Westbrook's plan of sacrificing 2 to save thousands is straight up utilitarianism. The captain's order to follow the chain of command no matter what, straight up Kantian duty. And Bedrosian's instinct of protecting who you can right now, that is pure Aristotelian virtue ethics. It actually felt like a Justice League moment. Batman calculates the numbers, Superman feels the moral weight, Wonder Woman follows her principles, and Trek puts all 3 of these philosophies in your lap and says, you have got 5 seconds. Pick one. And whatever you choose, you have to live with it. And boy, as someone who's fresh off watching Enterprise, it gave me big Captain Archer energy. That vibe of making the right call, even if it breaks a rule or annoys someone at the very least, comes with consequences. It seems to me that Star Trek isn't about emotional choices, it's about ethical ones at the end of the day. And I loved that for a second, the game made me stop and think, do I obey the captain? Which of my crew do I listen to? Or do I just follow my own instincts? It felt like a tiny, playable Star Trek dilemma that was really cool, and I really enjoyed having the weight of that choice, even if it was made really redundant when the captain took it surprisingly well, and I didn't get demoted or discharged.
If I'm being honest, I'm not sure what I would have done in the moment either. Disappointed!
And after this was all resolved, it was here that even through all that jank and that goofy animations, something clicked for me about what Star Trek actually is at its core. In DC stories, Superman, the Green Lantern Corps, the Justice League, the core conflict is always what is the right thing to do when there is no perfect option. And from what I've experienced with Star Trek so far, that Star Trek is exactly that, but filtered through diplomacy, right? Instead of fighting. It's structured, it's optimistic, but realistic at the same time. It's hopeful, but it's not naive. And Resurgence kept asking me, what does it mean to act with integrity when people are counting on you? And weirdly, that's the part that hooked me. Not the phases, not the ships, the philosophy. And I wanted to include a more philosophical element to this video in the vein of my Enterprise review that got blocked. So there's a moment later on where the absolute mad lad himself shows up, Spock, and we have a meeting to discuss the main mission of the game. And suddenly, we're in a diplomatic briefing about 2 alien races on the brink of war, the Aldeans and the Hotari. And instantly, I was reminded of my Enterprise review, where I talked about the Valakians and the Menk in a similar situation. In Enterprise, Archer asked, do humans have the right to decide the evolution of another species? And in Resurgence, it becomes, do you have the right to decide the political destiny of 2 species? It is the same question, just on a different scale. And here's what hit me as a newcomer to this franchise. We have just met these people, and already we are inserting ourselves into their civilization. And I'm sitting there thinking, doesn't this break the Prime Directive? This feels like a classic DC dilemma, for example, like Superman deciding whether or not to intervene in another civilization's conflict because it could change their future. But then the briefing goes deeper. The Aldeans, who are the dominant species, are basically using the Hotari purely as a labor force. Now, to me, that's slavery.
Clearly, the Hotari have been exploited in this.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And the second that the Hotari quite rightly push back, the Aldeans cry for Starfleet to intervene. And I'm just sitting there like, so you exploit a civilization, you depend on their labor, you refuse to treat them as an equal, and then expect someone else to fix it for you. This genuinely hit me like a Green Lantern storyline. The Guardians always warn the Lanterns, you should not interfere with a civilization's natural development. But I was thinking, what if that civilization is oppressing another? Because suddenly non-interference starts to look like it's enabling injustice. Can you see the complexity? Philosophically, this whole thing boils down to that old debate between John Stuart Mill, who feared benevolent imperialism, versus Franz Fanon, who argued that oppressed peoples have the right to resist by any means necessary. Now, Trek isn't quoting philosophers at you, but the arguments are baked right into the plot. And throughout the whole meeting, I got only a couple of dialogue options to say basically something along the lines of, does anyone else see how messed up this is? And so this is where Star Trek morality really clicked for me, because suddenly I realized that you're not here to pick a side. You're there to prevent suffering without becoming the arbiter of someone else's history. And it actually reminded me of the classic Spock line from The Wrath of Khan.
Logic clearly dictates that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the one.
But here's the twist. What if the many are the oppressors and the few are the ones who are suffering? Because suddenly maths don't solve the morality anymore, and to a newcomer like myself to this franchise, that is something that keeps coming up in the Star Trek that I've consumed so far and enjoy the most. Now, I didn't expect a 5-minute dialogue scene to hit me with that sort of ethical weight, but between Spock, the political tension, the moral calculus, and the hyper-analyst of Enterprise I already did for a video that no one's going to see in their life, this was the moment I realized Star Trek isn't just about exploring space, it's about exploring ethics. And that was my in to this franchise. Now, I was having lunch with my parents earlier, and I was talking to my dad, and he mentioned that he never understood why I was into Star Wars but not Star Trek growing up. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think I've got it. Because Trek is philosophical, it's slow, it is moral dilemmas and political drama and level 100 Bethesda speech decks. And as a kid, especially with my ADHD brain, that just wasn't exciting. But as an adult, philosophy is exciting. Ethics are engaging. These dilemmas now soothe my brain instead of losing it. I just wasn't ready for Star Trek when I was younger. So, the question that you're probably all asking is, did Star Trek Resurgence convert this old DC fan into a Trekkie? Honestly, I was already there from sort of Enterprise, but yeah. But not because it's the best game ever, I mean it is really rough around the edges, but because it let me step into this world, make the hard calls, feel the weight of Starfleet responsibility, and actually sit in the philosophy at hand. Resurgence made the Star Trek worldview playable for me. Now, even though I had hyper-analyzed Archer when watching Season 1 of Enterprise, actually playing through this game and making my own choices made me understand the severity of the shots a captain has to call when on the bridge. So that continues my foray into the world of Star Trek, and it feels so good to talk about it on this channel finally. Now, if you're a DC fan, don't worry, the DC content will continue. But if you're a Trek fan, finding me for the first time, welcome aboard, friend. This channel is all about my journey into both of these strange worlds. Thank you for watching. Hit like if you enjoyed this newbie perspective, and let me know, should I do a full Resurgence playthrough? Should I review more of it? Or should I handle another Trek theme next? I will see you all in the next one. Live long and prosper.